All right, all right, all right, all right. Yes. Good morning, everybody. Fantastic Tuesday morning. Why? Because it's just stopped raining, and I hope there's a gap where we have some sun and we don't have to when your clothes start getting like that smell that they haven't dried properly.
Oh no! It's like
it's not there yet.
It's a bit of a povo smell.
It's a real povo smell. It's disgusting. And I always thought that if that happens to your clothes, you have to throw them away. But then someone told me, you don't have to, because you can wash that out, and there are things you can do to it to get rid of it. But it's like when like things haven't dried out properly. For example, if you've got any leaks in your roof or whatever, or there's something in the electricity board that keeps tripping because there's a light that is getting wet or something like that. There's always something with this rain. If it goes on for more than 5 days, it's that kind of problem you have to deal with. But
yeah,
last night, the weirdest thing happened. I was meant to be in the studio this morning.
I was contemplating joining you.
No, well, please.
Thank goodness I didn't go to the effort.
Next time, I will let you know in advance and we'll do it properly. But the reason I'm not in this morning is because at like 1 o'clock in the morning or somewhere thereabouts, my fucking house alarm went off. Now, that thing hasn't gone off I didn't even know it worked anymore. And no, seriously, it just suddenly started going, but like, and loud, hey, because you forget how loud those things are because they don't go off all the time. And I was like, what the fuck?
Did you think there was an intruder?
I didn't even think. I woke up like a zombie and I like stumbled around until I could switch it off. And then, when you've just woken up, you're like, what the fuck's going on? So you don't even remember your code for your alarm. So you're like, bleep, 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 bleep. And it just carries on going.
Yeah.
And you're like, bleep, 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 bleep. And it stops. And I thought, oh, thank God. Okay, I can at least remember that. Jesus, how stupid. And then, of course, when you wake up like that, then you can't go back to sleep, right?
Wait, so didn't you try and figure it out?
Well...
Or were you like literally sleeping with a stranger in your house?
No, you know why? I thought... No, I knew exactly what it was. It was because of all the power interruptions and the rain and like everything else. Because even though I've got like battery backup and shit now, the alarm sometimes it resets itself, if that makes any sense. So it's happened before, but it hasn't happened for, I don't know, a couple of months. Anyway, it was very weird. And then I couldn't get back to sleep. And I was meant to be up at 4:45 this morning. And I think I just slept straight through that alarm.
Oh, yeah.
So I woke up 45 minutes later.
Trauma like that for an older person does tire one out.
Fuck off, man. Not that old. Bitch. Jesus, you're really full of it. I was talking to some friends of mine over the weekend because one of my really good mates is coming up this weekend. I haven't seen her for a bit, and she's like I don't know. She's even, I think she's a year or two older than me, but she is just like a dynamo, right? And the day she slows down, I'll know it's acceptable for the rest of us to slow down, because she looks like Kylie Minogue. She's this pocket rocket. She's got 2 kids. She's in great shape. She can party like it's nobody's business. And the day that she decides, no, it's time now to slow down and like become an old person, then I'll know the rest of us have an excuse. But it's not likely. She's just unbelievable. So she'll be up here this Friday. I'll judge it by that.
I'd set my standards a little bit lower.
No, she's quite something. I mean, again, there are times where it's acceptable to be old and boring, and I kind of walk a fine line. I can switch on the youthful energy when I need to, and I can also be a really grumpy old man. I mean, I laughed at this comment from I think Matthew in the comments. He says, "Good morning, Grandpa Cliff."
Oh yeah.
Oh, George says, George
Yeah.
says, Borge says rightly that the UK constantly smells. It's that moldy kind of smell. You know the kind that I'm talking about.
I know, because I lived in a very old, it was hundreds of years old, a house in Cork Bay, and you're on the shady side of the mountain when you live there, if you're facing the sea. And the floorboards, I mean, the floorboards, we lifted the carpets and
Yeah.
it uncovered this blanket of fleas.
Oh my god.
Yeah. So, in fact, it was the house that was built for the harbor master. So it was one
Oh
of
my
the
god.
first houses that was there.
Yeah.
Um, and it was built at the exact angles that it faced the lighthouse, the harbor. Um, and when it rained, and that all happens in winter in the Cape, you have these day sessions of long rain and very little light.
Hmm.
Yeah, that smell. I used to put into the wardrobes, those, like, they're almost like those little packets that say "do not eat" with silicone in them.
Yeah, yeah, to dry it
But
out.
yeah, you get bigger ones, bigger versions, and those within a few days would have soaked up all the moisture.
Okay, that's a clever way of doing things. I said I don't know any of this stuff. I'm not domestic enough. Um, the point I suppose is also it's just when there's a huge amount of rain like this, that you must expect a certain number of problems. Like your roof isn't going to be perfect, even if it doesn't leak any other time. When you've had 7 days of nonstop rain and it's been hard rain, I mean, this has been,
Mm.
like people who measure these things tell me this has been quite a lot. It's been extraordinary. I mean, there's this river in front of my house and it hasn't gone down. It's been flooding almost consistently for like 4 or 5 days. So I think that's unusual. That's why it's so it's so damned irritating when things go wrong, and you do end up with like electrical problems and all. Even at the
Yes.
office, which we've just moved into now, there are certain light switches that are now tripping. This is part of like the teething problems of moving into a new place,
Mm.
and it doesn't irritate me because you expect with all of this rain that one or two things will go wrong.
When the doors swell and you can't open or
Yeah.
close them properly.
Yeah, right, exactly. George says quite rightly, after the alarm goes off, then security phones, then there's a knock at the door, and then you've kicked your toe. It's exactly right. And it's 1 a.m. It's like, what the fuck, man? You
And
know?
your family members who are connected to your alarm system are phoning and saying, "Why is your alarm going off?" And
Yeah.
you haven't answered, and so
Well,
security has phoned your family members.
this is it. Now, I was most worried about the noise this was making for the neighbors. I didn't think there was an intruder. I mean, it's stupid of me, right? Your first instinct should be, oh shit, there's someone in my house.
Yeah.
You would think. Anyway, I suppose we're all trying to find solutions for these things. Some people can't get to their houses because of the flooding. I don't know if you've
Mm-mm.
seen in parts of Mpumalanga. Yeah, parts of Mpumalanga there are like bridges underwater. There was a fake bridge being washed away video that everyone was sending.
Oh.
Yeah, everybody. Well, I say everybody. A lot of people that I know got it. It's this really dramatic video of this bridge over a river, but the whole thing gets washed away, and it's like it's really dramatic. It's a big deal. And then someone said, this happened near wherever in Mpumalanga, Barberton or something. But it's bullshit. It's like in Ohio in the US, and it was like 5 years ago or something. Why do people do that? What are
Fake
they trying to
news.
get? Yeah, they're trying to get like kudos for breaking a story, but it's fake. You're going to get into trouble for breaking a bullshit story. Your friends are never going to believe you again. Why would you sacrifice your credibility by sending people this dumb video that is not even recorded in this country and trying to tell people that's somewhere here? I mean, there have been some bridges, quite rightly pointed out by Tracy this morning, that have been swept away, but they're not big, dual carriageway suspension bridges like it appears in this video.
We don't have any of those. Um, but the thing
Uh,
is that's what caught my eye when I started working with a new company that I'm working with. that trains journalists across Africa.
Yeah.
And a big part of that training is about fake news. And all the tools that you need now as a journalist to check everything. So
But
like reverse image search and checking the metadata on an image to make sure that it's not fake, and video searching.
But Leigh-Ann, it's not just journalists who need to know this stuff. It's everybody.
Yeah.
Because everyone is now a journalist, and everybody now is the, like the front line of eyewitnessing things and reporting them.
Yeah.
There weren't any, like, what do they call those jackets that the journalists used to wear when they'd go on like war correspondent missions?
There's like camping sleeveless camping jackets.
Yeah, exactly. There was
with
no
all
one
the
like
pockets.
Yeah, there was no one with a notepad and a telephoto lens and a one of those stupid jackets hanging around Florida Road when AKA was shot on Friday. We all found out from other people, ordinary folks who were there.
Yeah.
All right, so that's pretty much the start of my day this morning at like 1 a.m. with the alarms going off. I hope you've had a better start to your day. Tell us what you're up to. Ricky says, at least you didn't shoot at the bathroom door. Yeah, exactly.
Oh my gosh. I
Tracy
still
says,
can't laugh at that, even though I'm laughing.
And it is Valentine's Day today, so it's the anniversary.
Oh, it is too.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so excited.
How sad is this, says Tracy. A lady in the Karoo went away for a weekend. Her ex looked after her dogs. He went psycho then and had them all put down. Holy shit. He did it because he could. What a horrible person. Can you imagine getting home and your dogs were put down? What a bastard son of a bitch. Ugh, there's some sick people. There's some sick people. Like, why would you go? I do not understand. Now, I've had relationships that are good. I've had relationships that are not great, but never so bad that I'd actively go out of my way to hurt someone like that. What a shit psycho to do this. I mean, here we are on Valentine's Day.
Well, this is the perfect time to bring this up.
Yes, go on.
I found a heartwarming article which outlines the 7 true crime documentaries which you should be watching this Valentine's Day.
Oh, no.
To remind you that love may not always be a good thing.
Oh, no.
So, no, speaking of which, wow, I got into the Jeffrey Dahmer, the Dahmer series on Netflix.
Oh, right. You're a bit slow to catch on because you and I,
because
I still haven't watched it, but people have been telling me to watch it.
Yeah, so I watched the first one, and I was a little disappointed because it starts with him being arrested and exactly how he was arrested. And usually with true crime, I mean, you're figuring out who done it, you're going through all the investigation, you're watching family members appealing for help, and then you only find out who it is. So I thought, well, if this is what it's going to be like, I'm not really into it. And then one day I forced myself to go into episode 2. The stuff that unfolds in that is just...
You're into it.
Wow. So no, I'm done with it. I'm even on to the Jeffrey Dahmer tapes, which are now the lawyer that he was assigned. So his lawyer brought on an assistant, a brand new legal assistant at the time. And this was her very first case.
Oh,
and
wow.
She was left to most of it. She was the one who conducted all the interviews with him in prison on tape. And she was this young little thing. And she had to listen to firsthand all of his very honest, testimonies about what he did. He never hid anything. He was actually quite an honest person. Anyway, all that aside, if you do want to be reminded that love may not always be a good thing,
yes,
and if you're feeling a little bit nauseous by the pink, white, and red, then step into the shadows These are the sort of tragic love stories that are rich with murder, mystery, and intrigue
Oh
for
my
you to
God. No,
watch.
no. Too much for my liking. Sorry. I'll tell you something though. I discovered something very interesting. Being a student of history and loving
Yeah.
history, I found out about this tradition that people used to have, which I wish we could bring back for Valentine's Day. It's called Vinegar Valentines. Have you heard about this?
What? No?
So just as much as you would send, okay, basically when the post office was invented in Britain in the late 1700s, early 1800s, that was the first opportunity that you would have to send someone an anonymous note. Before that, and there were people who were outraged by this, by the way. There were people who thought it was a terrible idea, including G.K. Chesterton, the famous wit, who said that he thought that it was a very bad idea that people should be able to send clandestine and unsolicited messages to each other. Because what used to happen before the post office was that people would send letters via couriers who would work either for individuals or for companies, but the recipient would pay. So if I sent you a note or a letter or whatever, you'd have to pay upon receiving it. So we'd knock on your door, say, "Hello, is that Ms. Mole?" And you go, "Hello, yes, 'tis me." There's the dog barking because I knocked.
Oh, Alice.
You'd go, "Yes," and then they would pass you the note, and you'd have to pay, and that would cost you a threepence. And you'd say, "Oh," you'd count your change and give them a threepence.
And
Now,
if you were short, you'd hand over a bag of potatoes.
yeah, correct. Well, there's something that you would do. So what they did is they changed the rules when they established the post office, and the sender would pay for the letter.
Yes.
Alice. So
Oh,
what would
shame.
happen is that they also put up the pillboxes that you'd put your letters into, and then the postman would come by and collect them and distribute them. You'd pay for your stamp and blah blah blah. Anyway, so what that meant is that on Valentine's Day, which was really a thing that started in the UK, it didn't start in the US with Hallmark cards. People would send these anonymous Valentines to each other, and most of them would be, I met you the other night and would love to have another discussion, and I hope that this this letter finds you well, and please, if you would. And they'd usually rhyme them and try to make them quite creative. But anyway,
Yeah.
I mean, most of those were the normal love letters that you'd expect on Valentine's Day. But this whole thing developed around Vinegar Valentines, which were like insults that you would send to you'd send anonymously to people that you wanted to get a message. And I think this is superb. And
It's not very 2023, with anti-bullying and
well,
big.
I don't know if that's true, because all that you see on the internet, especially on Twitter, is like vituperative, mean people sending each other rude fucking messages. It's all you see is like, shut up. What do you know about this or whatever? Anyway, I think we must revive this where people can send horrible. Here's an example, right? So here's what it looked like.
Oh, nice.
You ask to see me home, kind sir. I thank you, but decline. One beau is quite enough for me. I'm satisfied with mine. You need not sit upon the fence to see me going by. I cannot give you such a chance. There now, dear me, don't cry.
She totally brushed him off.
Right. So, the woman could send it to the man, or the man could send it to the woman. And you wouldn't just send it to people that you knew and liked. I mean, for example, they would send them to the shop assistant. And to listen to this one, the old maid on the left here. It says, "She caught a poor cat and bird, but she can't snare a man, or so we've heard. It's the old maid's sad fate to lose out on a mate and take tea, but shh, not a word."
My God.
Isn't that great? Isn't that nice?
It's basically my house in that picture.
I know, and it's you. It even looks like you. Look at that.
No, it certainly doesn't. It's the antithesis.
And then there's one here. Poetical poseur. Behold, this pale little poet, with a finger at the forehead to show it. But the way he gets scads is by writing soap ads. But he wants nobody to know it.
That's still applicable today.
Wouldn't
There's
you?
so many copywriters who would absolutely hate to know
I
for everyone
know.
to know what they were writing.
Wouldn't you love though to send someone an insult rather than something nice? And this also became a big thing in the American Civil War. So here, for example, is to the surgeon. So all the guys in a regiment or whatever would send the surgeon Vinegar Valentines because they hated him. To the surgeon, ho ho, old sawbones, here you come. Yes, when the rebels whack us, you're always ready with your traps to mangle, saw, and hack us.
These
Great.
are beautiful. I love them.
I would love to bring back this. This is something we should do. Forget fucking love letters. Who wants those? I want Vinegar Valentines. I want people to send rude, but you've got to write it nicely. So look at this nice one. On the left, it's called the Suffragette Valentine, right? So you'd
Yeah.
send this to some uppity, very political woman. You'd say,
Yeah.
"Your vote from me you will not get. I don't want a preaching suffragette." And then
uh,
another one of the a woman who uses her husband's money, held in bondage is what it's called, and then it's this woman carrying her husband,
like a
like a bag,
handbag with a label on it.
and it says, "Your wifey holds you in her hands. You dare not disobey commands, and every single cent you earn, she takes, and so has money to burn." I love
Jeez,
these.
this
I
it's
wish.
like the perfect time to be really honest with someone. I love
I
that.
know. So I don't understand why we do the the only thing that seems to have survived is the cheesy kind of pink and red and white Valentine. You
Mhm.
remember we spoke to that woman in Collectomania last year, I think it was, about her collection of Valentines in America. Remember, she's got these 1800s cards and early 1900s
Yes.
cards, beautifully decorated, and the first ones that were machined, that machines could make, so they could mass produce them. And there was this woman in America who made an absolute fortune out of selling the
Yes.
Valentine's cards. So it got me thinking, and I then found out about these Vinegar Valentines. But I reckon this would be a much more fun way to spend Valentine's Day. There's a lot of pressure on people that they feel they're not going to get a Valentine, and especially at school, we've discussed how horrible it was when someone else would get a Valentine and you wouldn't, or you'd get one but you get it from someone you didn't like. So I
I'm
think
sure
this is a
that's
much
I
more
wonder
fun
if
way to
that
go about
stuff is I wonder if that stuff is regulated now. It must be, surely. I mean, in our day, ugh, it was a horrible day. It could be really good, but that would only be for a handful of people. But it was all about popularity and how many Valentines were
it. You
slipped
were
into your suitcase.
you were quite sexy at school, weren't you? And you got quite a few.
No, I was kind of average. I only really became better looking in my early 20s. I was very young at school. I matriculated when I was 17. Um, so I only started really becoming more attractive later on. So it wasn't always the best day. I wasn't the one who received the most Valentines in and we did it properly, hey?
Yeah,
You had to you
yeah,
handmade these things. You had to find a moment to sneak it into someone's bag. At the same time, you were probably checking your own bag. But I'm
right.
sure these things have to be regulated now.
I don't know. When regulated, like what the school doesn't allow you. All they could
Yes.
all they could do is they would either ban them, which I think would be so boring, and as if, oh God, as if it isn't hard enough for millennials and Gen Z kids to be able to go on a date. I mean, we were talking just yesterday about how awful these dating apps are. And
Yeah.
I came up with a few ideas around a permissions app, which will allow. I still think there's merit in this. It'll allow you to kind of reveal. Someone could basically tick off certain things, and it would reveal things about themselves that can be like almost fact checked, but it would be really honest shit, like how much do you earn, or um, are
Uh,
you currently in a relationship, and then you'll allow people to know these things, and it will
mm,
help you to get past all that awkwardness and weirdness. Plus, of course, a lot of people lie, especially people who are
of course, 100%.
on these apps on the sly. But I always think, it was hard to not get as many Valentines as someone else or get none at all at school. But that's also part of what you have to deal with growing up. How weak are people going to be if they can't even deal with not getting a Valentine? I mean,
Yeah.
how sad and stupid are the adults in your life that they try to protect you from the mere fact that you might not get a love letter on Valentine's Day? I mean, so you triggered and break down and go and cry in the toilets? Good. Grow some fucking backbone. Because I promise you, the worst thing about life that's going to come at you very, very shortly after that is not going to be, I didn't get a love letter. You're going to have a lot more to deal with in your life than that. And I always wonder what kind of parents would try to protect their kid from something so banal. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd be really interested to know what happens now in schools. And also because I like to say, well, back in the day, it was really tough for us. When we walked to school.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, please, let's not compare. I always say to people, and I showed this video. Was it on Friday? I think it was on Friday's show. Because people were complaining about, I've got so much anxiety. Like every kid at every high school in South Africa now has got anxiety. So they're on anxiety medication. And I think I put this out on Instagram. It's this video of a 3-year-old coal miner. No, sorry, 3-year-old chimney sweep. It's a kid who goes out with his dad in the early 1900s.
Yeah.
Walks down the street like this, and he's got his little thing of rope, and he's got his broom, and he's walking behind his dad. He's 3 years old, this kid.
Going to
and
work.
Then his dad lowers him down the chimney, and he cleans the inside of it, and then he comes out, and he's all black in the face and everything, and this is his day. This is what a kid's day in 1900 might have been if your dad was a chimney sweep, and if that's what you were there to do. You didn't go to school. Get anxiety medication because you were going up and down people's fucking chimneys, which can't have been fun in any way. There's no 3-year-old who ever enjoyed being a chimney sweep. But this little kid walked with real purpose and sent it to, a friend of mine saw it on Instagram and replied, chim chim chiroo.
Chim chimney, chim chimney, chim chim chiroo.
I was like, don't tell me about your anxiety. You're just weak. This is a 3-year-old chimney sweep. I know.
It's Pavlov's, not Pavlov's, and not Pavlov either. Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And the more comfortable we become in terms of that pyramid of needs, the more cushioning we have, and the more we are protected from the world, the more we become bothered by things that shouldn't be bothering us, because we start becoming introspective. We think too deeply. We notice the smallest things.
We're just spoiled. We're spoiled by running water, part-time electricity here in South Africa, but we're spoiled by all of this stuff. And kids at school are prevented from feeling anything negative. They're told that life is going to be full of positive things and everything's going to work out for you. And then when it doesn't, they fall apart at the first sign of any kind of resistance. And it's very bad. I'm telling you, we're not even beginning to scratch the surface of what this is going to do to the next generation of kids, because they are weak. They are soft. And they expect everything to go their way. And if it doesn't go their way, they fall in a complete heap. It's pathetic. Really, we can't think that this doesn't have a cost. Anyway, look at this quickly. Sure. There's some hilarious rhymes coming through now. We've started Vinegar Valentines. Congo Chris says, roses are red, ANC loves a bribe. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Tracy says, and this isn't a poem, but she says, there was a girl in our school whose birthday was on Valentine's Day. We could never understand why she got so many flowers and stuff on Valentine's Day. But it was because it was her birthday. Poor girl. Congo Chris says, there once was a man called George Meany who drove around in a Lamborghini, but he drove really slow, slower than Service in Limpopo. So now he drives a Picanto. And here's an interesting Carl says, I've noticed that my daughter's school, only the unattractive male teachers get into trouble on Valentine's Day. The good-looking ones get away with murder. But that is true for everything. And we discussed this the other day, and people got very uptight and very upset with me in the comments section and everywhere else because I said that if Harvey Weinstein was better looking and he looked like Brad Pitt, a lot of those women who got Oscars by doing horrible things to Harvey Weinstein and having Harvey Weinstein do horrible things to them, a lot of them wouldn't have complained.
It wasn't only his looks. He had a genital mutilation.
Did he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to remember now because now you've sprung this on me.
Good God.
I think he was born with some kind of genital issue where it was some, and I'm going to be corrected. I have to be because this is wrong, but it was something like the testicles were where the penis was supposed to be, and the other way around. He had some kind of weird issue going on down there as well. So it wasn't just his looks. But I mean, if you look at back to Jeffrey Dahmer, he wasn't a bad-looking guy at all, and he had quite a good physique. And he got away with murder for so long because he was this very kind, good-looking, well-mannered man.
Oh yeah,
no one suspected.
Let's not pretend that most. This is going to get us into so much trouble, but I'll tell you something. There are a lot of people who would never complain about inappropriate advances from a man in the workplace or anywhere else. If those men are good looking, then it's never really a big deal. It's like, no, not really, whatever. Or yeah, sure, let's go around the print room and in the stairwell, see what we can get up to. But as soon as the guy's hideous and he makes the wrong move, he's like, hello, would you like to go on a date with me? And she goes, oh my God, that's sexual harassment. It's just such fucking nonsense. It really is. Wendy says, my surname is Coleman, so are my in-laws. They were all coal miners, hence the 3-year-old who went to work with dad. Yeah, you descend from a long line of hardworking, coal miners. Good for you. Producer Ryan says, I'm realizing how much of a scam school was. For Valentine's Day, we had to pay R5 to wear regular clothes. Oh, I remember that. That was nonsense too. Leigh-Ann is right. That's also why Harvey also wanted to massage his victims. Ugh. Oh, God. But I'm telling you, if he was hot and he was really good looking, then a lot of those girls wouldn't have complained and they would have got their Oscars. A lot of them didn't complain anyway and got their Oscars, remember? So, yeah, it's just funny that they switch on I've been sexually harassed stuff for certain guys and switch it off for other ones. That's all. I'm not saying all women are hypocrites. I'm not saying all of these situations are easy to understand from this point of view, but I'm saying a few of them are. That's all.
Mm-hmm.
So Valentine's Day, I just want to, reiterate that I think Vinegar Valentines are definitely a thing and we need to get into.
Absolutely. I'm 100% with you.
Let's bring it back to where it belongs. All right. So quickly, the rand has broken 18 rand to the dollar. We've been fiddling around in the 17 rand to the dollar. Now we're finally through 18 rand to the dollar. I know everyone was waiting for this. It's such great news. Aiming
finally.
It seems like it's a goal of the government, though, to just destroy everything, including the rand. So here we go. Markets are strapping in for further interest rate hikes in the US, and they cast doubt on President Cyril Ramaphosa's promises to resolve the ongoing power crisis. Oh, you don't say. Anyway, the rand traded above 18 to the dollar on Monday afternoon. Currency started off the week squarely on the back foot following a cold response from analysts, investors, and economists towards Ramaphosa's State of the Nation address on Thursday last week. While the SONA played a key part in keeping currency under pressure, rand's weakness is more as a result of movements in U.S. markets. And we actually spoke about this on Markets Mondays just yesterday. So if you didn't get to listen to that, go and listen to it now. And you can find out a little bit more. Local economists have been echoing similar sentiments. Nedbank said that the pressure on the rand has intensified over the past week, caused by a stronger US dollar. Following hawkish comments by senior Fed officials, the ongoing electricity crisis, and worrying elements in this year's State of the Nation address. So we expect regular load shedding through to the end of 2024 at least. That's what ABSA said. Yeah, it's probably about right. Okay, great news there on the economic front.
And the power front.
And then just to prove how basic and stupid we are in this country, and really, I don't like to say it gives me no joy, but I often say we get the government we deserve. The government is just a reflection. It's just a mirror of the average South African, right? So you think you're better than that.
Oh, no, that's horrible to think about.
No, it is true, because here's an example of why. It's fine for us to blame the government and say, oh, the economy's ruined. You can't run Eskom properly. Crime is out of control. All of that stuff. And it's true. All of that is true. But the average South African is okay with this government. And that's because this government is actually kind of like the average South African. Lazy.
Oh, no.
Yeah. Quite ordinary. We've got a very, very low standard of education across the board in this country. We've even got a department called the Department of Basic Education. And when people use the word basic, what they mean. Anyway, as Valentine's Day dawns on us this morning, the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Health, MEC, Nomagugu Simelane, has urged people to enjoy the day responsibly and use protection when engaging in sexual activity.
Oh, it's like the least of our worries right now, really.
Well, is it or isn't it? Because also, I think I fail to see any nuance here. This minister immediately, this MEC in KZN, immediately jumps to the conclusion that Valentine's Day must equal pumping. She's that basic.
Well, guess what she's going to be doing tonight?
Well, but this is the problem, right? So she immediately goes to fucking. She doesn't go, there's no like in her world, Valentine's Day equals open your legs. And I'm like, what about a little bit of romance, honey? Why don't we start with some flowers or one of those cute little Valentine's cards we were talking about just now? Oh no, for her, it's like straight to that. She says the number of people who have sexually transmitted diseases in our province keeps increasing. This is a beautiful day, but enjoy it responsibly and protect yourself.
Yeah, so and let's talk about labial corns at the same time.
And genital herpes. Yeah, let's talk about that. That's so romantic. I would almost, I know that she's trying to be responsible. I get what she's trying to do here. She's trying to tell us to be responsible because, again, the people of this country are so basic, right? That probably it's not even her who's saying this. It's probably because she knows, like the average South African is so stupid and doff that they are thinking Valentine's Day equals sex. So she's she's just trying to get us to behave ourselves. But it's so sad that this is how we have to do. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not a romantic.
Very primitive.
It's so bad.
I mean, Valentine's is about writing poems and Vinegar Valentines and.
Not to her. To her, it's like pouring vinegar on your genitals so you don't get anything. So bad.
Showering with onions and garlic or whatever you're supposed to do.
Oh my God.
Goodness me. Listen, I must tell you something quickly. My dad, talking about traditional people.
Mm-hmm.
When my dad finds someone of service, so a plumber, an electrician, a car mechanic, whatever, even if he found them at the age of 19, he will still use them to this day. Okay. He's about being very, very loyal.
Yeah.
And even though we used to live in the south of Joburg, because that's where the family business was, which was a printing factory, and we haven't for 20 years. He still has most of these service people in the south of Johannesburg. But when I say the south of Johannesburg, I'm talking Rosettenville.
Okay.
We're going deep in Rosettenville straight. Okay. Now, Rosettenville, you used to be able to walk around. I would walk around holding my boyfriend's hand and we would go and get a burger. Speaking of
Yeah.
romantic, innocent things,
Right.
it's not like that anymore. Okay. I've never seen a place deteriorate to this degree in my life. I've never. It's absolutely terrible. If you think that you've got it bad with your potholes and the rubbish on the side of the street, boy, you have no idea how bad it is. And he continues to have his two old cars, which my brother bought off of Auto Trader when he was 13 years old, and he's now nearly 40, serviced at
Yeah.
this place in Rishitonville. And you know what else? He will not use Uber.
No,
Why?
I know
Because you
people.
mustn't pay for a service. You
Hmm.
must use family members to give you a lift.
Yeah.
So he's so religious about servicing these fucking cars.
It really irritates you, eh?
So
Uh,
every 3 months, one of us has to either take him there or pick him up or whatever, do one of the trips. And this time it was at 8 o'clock in the morning, and it was, I think, Wednesday this week or Tuesday or something. And got the dreaded message, please can someone come and fetch me from Rishitonville at 8 o'clock in the morning. I mean, I've got to set my alarm for that.
Oh no. But can I also ask you, because this is something we've brought up on the show before, your dad is indicative of a certain way of thinking, which isn't necessarily just generational, but it's also like,
no, he's as crazy as fuck. He's completely nuts.
I mean, I know people, and luckily I've managed to get my family to stop asking, but the people who want you to fetch them from the airport.
Yeah, no,
I'm like,
exactly.
don't need to have. Do you know what my hourly rate is?
It's more than Uber because your car's better. It uses more fuel.
I said to my parents once, they're like, "Oh, can you fetch us from the airport?" This is, I don't know what, like 10 years ago or whatever. And I said to them, "No, there's no need. There's this fantastic thing called Uber. I'll get it for you." And they're like, "Oh, no, 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 we can't drive with some stranger." I was like, "No, you can, and it's really fantastic. What would the difference be if a hotel sent you a car to collect you?" Oh, good point. So I explained it to them that way. I do not have the time or the inclination to have to drive to OR Tambo to pick someone up. It's 45 minutes there, it's 45 minutes back if there's no traffic. And chances are there'll be traffic. Plus, there's nothing worse than the airport because you can't park if you're just picking people up. So you have to drive round and round, and you have to wait. And then the Metro police come and they knock on your window and they say, "Oh, you can't stop here." And it's a horrible job.
Massive inconvenience.
Let the guy from Uber earn the money. He deserves it. Right? I mean, this thing with your dad and having to service the cars with the same old asshole who he's been using for how long? Like, there's probably someone 5Ks from your house who's probably better because they're not a doddering old fool who shakes like a leaf.
Please. I have to step in here and I have to protect the guy because he's really a nice guy and he does a really good job. But just hang on now.
That's such a great job. Why is he still in Rishitonville?
So I go and pick my dad up. On the way there, we both notice in our separate cars that the traffic on the highway is bumper to bumper on the way back because it's 8 o'clock in the morning on a weekday. Yeah. So he decides to go through. I pick him up and we're both in my car now. And he says, "Let's go through town." I'm like, "Dad, don't know if I'm feeling that because I haven't been through town in years and I think it's going to be bad, especially judging with how badly Rishitonville has declined." Mm-hmm. No, we end up going through town. Well, if I tell you, when you go under the highway and you follow going from town to like St. John's High School.
Yeah, horrible.
What? It was like the apocalypse.
Yeah, it's yes, it's this is going to sound terrible to anyone who hasn't seen it before. They're going to be like, Leigh-Ann and Gareth are such horrible people to say this about other human beings. But it is like a zombie apocalypse. It's the Walking Dead. All you need and especially on a cloudy day, all you need is that music. And it's exactly, you literally see people like dragging shit across the street. They
Yep.
hunch, they walk with their hands like this. They all on tick and God knows whatever else. It's a really, really bad scene. The Joburg
Piles
scene,
of rubbish taller than human beings.
yes, and like
And I'm
smoke and like just it looks dystopian and apocalyptic. You're exactly right.
And
Ugh.
I'm not dissing anyone by saying this. I was genuinely concerned and felt an enormous amount of empathy for anyone who has to live there. I mean, we drove right alongside Ponty. And if you remember, I think Ponty's only now pulled itself right, where you can actually do a tour of Ponty and they've got gift shops and all sorts of things. But just a few years ago, a handful of years, it was overrun by Nigerian drug lords. The owners of the building couldn't even consider entering it. The Nigerian drug lords were charging people exorbitant amounts of rent and favors in the form of sex and prostitution and all sorts of
No,
things to live there.
It's the apocalypse. It really is.
I got out the other side.
You were like shaking, right?
It's like a wall. You literally exit this utopian world and enter shaded streets. There's not one piece of green, not one discarded leaf in town.
No, it is very, very depressing. And now we've got a mayor who's like the most. He makes. I don't think anyone's sending him Valentine's cards. Let's put it that way.
I just thought to myself, if I looked into one of the apartments as I was at a Red Robot, and I thought the whole place was just like it was almost covered in soot. And I thought if I had a choice between living there or sleeping there for one night, or robbing a rich family in the tree-lined streets and northern suburbs, I know exactly which one I would choose.
You would choose to rob. Yeah. Well, I just have to ask how it is that, and it's not a poverty thing, because I know poor people who are clean, who look after themselves, who wash, who dress their best. They don't live in rags and drag shit across the street like zombies. And someone says here, come on, Gareth, not here. Ancient Ether says, not everyone is on tick. Okay, but 90% of them are, right? Ugh, anyway.
Or something worse.
Copperhead says, my husband's family are like that about going to hospital. If someone ends up in the hospital, the rest of the family are expected to sit there and wait to see the ailing individual. See, that's also, you're in the hands of the experts and the professionals, you would hope, the medical people. There's no need for satellite people to be hanging around, clogging up the hallway. You know, I mean, I understand it comes from love and care and all of that stuff. If someone I know is in hospital, and I care about them a lot, and there are only a few people that I can say that about, I'll visit them. I'll make sure that they're okay. I'll ask them if I can bring them anything the next time I visit them. But I'm not hanging around the hospital the whole time. You're just in the way. Nobody needs. You're not important.
It's like the days when we all used to go and see off people at the airport, and we'd buy them like tins of travel sweets.
It's just so unnecessary.
And wave at the airplane as it took off.
I remember that. Like there was a time when people would go onto what they called the viewing deck. I think they've still got it somewhere.
Yeah.
They'd wave the plane.
Oh, we used to dress up. My if somebody that my grandfather, bless his soul, he died at the age of 102. If there was somebody he knew via someone else, we would all get dressed up and go to the airport, buy a tin of travel sweets, and go and see off their plane.
My grandparents, Donna says, lived in Ponty in the 80s when it was the place to be, way before crime lords hit. My gran was 10-pin bowls champion there at the time. Have not been back since the 80s. But this is my point, is how does a place that is Ponte was the coolest address
Yeah,
once.
my biological father lived there. I used to go there to visit him.
Right. So it used to be the coolest place in the world. How does it go from being the coolest address in Johannesburg with the best views to being this shitty, dirty, disgusting, crime-riddled canker sore on the lip of Johannesburg? How does it go to that? What happens
Yeah.
in between? Like, what kind of things do the people who live there have to start doing or stop doing for it to become like that? And what kind of, don't tell me you have any self-respect if you live in your own ordure and filth. Come on.
Well,
What is
that's what
that?
started happening. I mean, the core of the building, which is famously, it's recognized for that, was filled to
So like
a
the
certain number of
floor
floors,
rubbish,
yeah,
yeah.
with sewage and rubbish. And people it became notorious for people to commit suicide
Yeah,
from the
they've jumped
apartments.
from the top into the rubbish. Now, I mean, what a horrible
Mm.
way to die. I mean, really, at least if you jump to the outside, you hit some like paving or something.
But you know how it happens. Things start declining, and then people complain in the beginning, and then they just get used to it. And now, if you think about it, that's where we are with load shedding, for instance.
Well, that's why we need Karens, and I'm a big fan of Karens. I'm going to start a Karen support group because actually, without Karens, everything gets worse. Congo Chris says the number of mentally ill people who populate the streets are the
Yes.
unspoken ginger stepchild nobody wants to talk about, and till the problem, the till problem is his ugly girlfriend the family hate.
Sick,
I don't
probably.
problem. Listen, we can't have that many people who are mentally ill. There can't be that many.
Well, remember, it's not just genetic. It's not like people are being born with this ailment. It can develop, but due to your circumstances. So I'm not surprised. I would be a freaking lunatic if I lived there.
Again, I mean, this is just another example of a neighborhood that's gone to shit. And I wonder why. Why is it that certain places just, and maybe Leigh-Ann's right, people stop complaining and they just accept whatever's going on. But when last did you drive through Windsor? That's also in Johannesburg. It's starting to look like Hillbrow. That's near Cresta, right? It's that sort of area. It's starting to look like Hillbrow, and this is just 2 kilometers away from the Rand Park Golf Club. Yeah, I mean, Steve says, I used to stay in Windsor. I hear it makes Nigeria look like a holiday resort. You got to ask why.
Wow.
Why do these places start to go downhill so badly? There must have been very nice people who lived in very nice houses in Windsor once upon a time. Right?
It just happened.
Oh,
Excuse me.
spluttering and choking, are we? That's going to get you Valentine's card. Oh, that was so sexy. Do it again. I'll send you a Valentine's.
Send me love and hearts now.
Oh, Jesus.
You know what? Poor people have to be able to live somewhere. As long as they're alive, they're going to need to have to live somewhere. And I'm not being disparaging to poor people because, trust me, I've almost been there. And I've had to move as a result of my economic downturn at some point. But that's life. That's what happens.
But you do not just drop papers where you walk. You don't pile up rubbish in your back garden until it's so high that you can't open your door. You know what I mean?
I know.
There's a thing that happens where people, it's not about how little money you have. There's a thing that happens where people give up on, like, that is the stuff I don't understand. And you could blame the government, you could blame your parents, you could blame your wife or husband, you could blame whoever you like, your social welfare department, whoever. But in the end, the picking up of those papers is a you thing. And when you stop doing that, I stop feeling the need to help you. And I stop feeling the need to even regard you as being part of the human species, because you've given up on humanity. You've given up on your own humanity, let alone anyone else's. So how the hell am I meant to meet you halfway when for me to go halfway means I have to climb into your shit to get to you? I'm sorry. It's just not on.
What comes to mind always is how the Japanese behaved at the stadium during the World Cup, and how they all stayed behind to clean up and pick up rubbish, and without being asked.
That is civilization as opposed to decline. That's all it is. I mean, ancient ether says Joburg has the most sane, for lack of a better word, tick addicts in the country. I once walked past a guy talking to himself in the Joburg CBD, and he looked straight at me, replying, "I don't know you." I'll tell you what, there's a lot of that going on, hey, and cheap drugs and oh my God.
I just want to say quickly, the type of degradation that I saw in the CBD was not only due to the fault of the people living there. It was due to massive service problems. Massive.
Of course.
No one was removing the rubbish. You can pick up as many papers as you like. It's got to go in a pile somewhere.
You this way. I mean, San Francisco is probably one of the most expensive places in the world to live, right? And it is run by a government that is supposedly so compassionate that they hand out hypodermic needles and heroin to drug addicts because they want them to be able to safely use drugs. Okay. This is how compassionate, in inverted commas, that government is in San Francisco. And your property prices are sky high in San Francisco. For a house as big as the room I'm sitting in, you would pay as much as you would to buy a 5-bedroom house in Johannesburg. And you are in the midst of some of the most mind-blowing jobs in human history, like in Silicon Valley. You could work at one of these big tech companies. And yet the place is riddled with crime, drug addicts lying on the streets, rubbish everywhere. It looks kind of like a version of what you were describing earlier. And parts of San Francisco have become a lot like parts of Johannesburg. And I think it's partly top down, but it's also bottom up. The top down stuff is what you just reflected on now, the service delivery and the government and all of that stuff. The fact that it's, there are no rules and people aren't punished for doing bad things. And then on the other side, it's the bottom up thing. It's like that people just start off with no dignity. And if you treat someone who has no dignity in their own head for themselves, if you treat them with dignity, it just gets thrown back in your face. So there's something we've got to figure out here. Paul says nobody's forced to live under a bridge in Joburg. They're there by choice. Joburg is a shit show. Well, this is stuff we've got to talk about. But anyway, we've got to take a break because it is 7:00. When we come back, I'll tell you about a Valentine's Day playlist that our team have put together. So if you want to listen to some awesome Valentine's stuff, they've done the work for you. I've made a mixtape for you, and you'll be able to listen to that. So I'd love to hear from you, and we'll get to some more of these comments in just a little while because some of this stuff you can't blame on government, guys. Sorry, some of this stuff is us. And you got to look yourself in the mirror and go, "Ooh, what the hell's wrong with me?" Also, come up with a good Vinegar Valentine to send to someone today. And send someone an email with like a rude poem, an insulting and rude poem on it. I think I'd appreciate that,
Absolutely.
I think it would be awesome.
Absolutely.
Just because it's about technology, connecting your business to the rest of the world doesn't mean you need to send rockets to space and use complicated solutions. Want to simplicate things? Well, join Jaco Voigt, who is the CEO of Catalytic, on the Unbundled podcast. With skin in the game and a keen focus on educating and assisting you and your business, Jaco decodes all the aspects of connectivity, security, and cloud solutions. Unbundled is brought to you by Catalytic and is available on cliffcentral.com, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
This week on the Auto Trader podcast.
So moving on to the most searched for, most viewed, and most inquired. Do you know what that is?
I do, because I'm reading it right here. The most searched for brand. My brain's only so big. Most searched for brand is still VW.
Yeah. Okay.
And the most searched for model is still the Toyota Hilux.
No surprise there.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
All right. It is Tuesday morning. We are live. The 14th of February is Valentine's Day for those people who are really into that.
Wakey.
Yeah, wakey. And I hope you got like flowers and cards and shit. So a couple of comments we've got to get to. And there's so many people with interesting things to say here. I saw George Meany make the point earlier that he's seen wealthy people's cars in a state that looks like Rosettenville. You know, it's weird. You do meet people who are just untidy. I went shopping on, was it Sunday? Yeah, I think it was Saturday or Sunday, Saturday. And I went into the nearest shop, it's a very nice shop. They've got most of the stuff that you need. It's clean, it's well maintained. There were appalling and atrocious people in there. Like of the one guy had holes all over his shirt. The other guy's wearing a vest. The other one didn't have shoes on. I thought, for fuck's sake, what am I doing? Am I in Rosettenville? It's like, what is wrong with these people? You know? Honest to God. I mean, like, who goes out looking like that? We've discussed this with Mash on one of the shows where he was telling me about people who go out in pajamas to do their shopping. I was like, what is wrong? There was one woman, you'll love this. There's one woman marching up and down the aisle with her little pathetic husband pushing a trolley behind her. I promise you he was this thin and he looked so harassed. He looked like he spent every day of his life just avoiding her, like hitting him or whatever.
Like continuously punching.
She had an ass this wide. She was screaming at him in Afrikaans. And I just thought, what a horrible life to be married to that woman, or worse, to be that woman. Because the reason he's probably so pathetic is because he never stands up for himself or does anything. She has to take the lead. I just thought, what an awful, awful existence. And then, I get to the counter and I'm like, no wonder these poor people who work at the checkout counter don't smile anymore. They have to deal with this shit. These horrible people that I just saw in the aisles of this shop. I'm not going to complain next time they don't smile and go, "Hi, do you have your Checkers card, savings card ready?" I was like, "No, I don't, and I don't have a card, but don't worry about it. And I know you hate your job, but I can't blame you with these people you have to work for the whole time."
I just had a vision of that non-PC cartoon that was doing the rounds, where not a cartoon, but like a little drawing of a woman who had a very big derriere, and she was pinning up a poster saying, "Have you seen my lost dog?" And the dog was actually pinned between her butt cheeks. She'd sat on it.
Oh, I've seen that one, yeah. She looked like that.
That reminds me of where, if ever her husband went missing, that's where he'd be.
She was like red in the face, and her eyes were like sunken in, like little piggy eyes, and she looked so cross, and everything that he did was wrong. If he reached for the tea bags, she'd say, "Not those tea bags, the other ones."
He's gonna die like that, and that would have been his whole life.
Oh, it's bad, man. I thought this is not nice. I'm not gonna go shopping on a Saturday again, because somehow in the weekday, you get sort of a better quality of person doing their shopping. Maybe it's because those people who are having the hard time and like looking like shit on a Saturday, working so hard the rest of the week, they don't get a chance to do the shopping. Who knows?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's awful, awful, awful idea. Do not look at the people that you are in the shop with. It will make you feel the opposite of hungry. You'll go blind. You want to gouge your eyes out. You'll want to put your eyes out with a stick when you see these people. Ugh. Anyway, It is Valentine's Day, so there are probably a lot of people who are looking for the perfect Valentine's gift. Leigh-Ann has such a suggestion for you this morning: a new vibrating pill that may help to ease chronic constipation. Now, there's a sexy, lovely, thoughtful Valentine's gift for you to give someone, right, Leigh-Ann? What a great idea!
Isn't the thought of this absolutely terrifying?
Horrific.
Would
Go on.
you? I mean, just think about
No.
it as a test
No.
subject. Would
Don't
you be
even
one of
finish
the
the
first
sentence. No.
to put? So these pills, they're here. Okay,
It's
they've been
positive.
approved by the FDA. They're called Vibrant. They were cleared for use in August last year, but the treatment is now just becoming available for doctors in the US to prescribe it. So coming to our coast soon. And it's a first of its kind therapy, and it stimulates colonic motility from the inside of the body, and then is eventually expelled during a bowel movement.
But it's a suppository. You have to push it up your asshole, and then it vibrates. And
No, you
what?
swallow it. Yeah. So it's a normal looking capsule, except for the fact that you have to activate it by putting it into a little device that turns it on.
Oh my God.
Pardon the pun.
But hang on.
So,
does this have mechanical parts inside of it?
yes, and all safe for human consumption. Yes, it's an actual little machine that you swallow, and it goes into your system and makes its way down your colon. So it's you take it at night. You first activate it in this little cup. You activate it, you take it at night, and it keeps quiet for like 4 to 6 hours.
Luckily, so while you're sleeping, it doesn't switch on in the middle of the night and like wake your husband or your girlfriend or your boyfriend or your aunt or whoever you
then it finally wakes up once it's in your bowel and starts vibrating. Okay.
Oh, great.
Yes, exactly.
What? I can't hear you over the machine that's just switched on in my bowel.
So basically what happens is it stimulates specialized nerve cells in your gut called the mechanosensory cells.
Oh, yeah?
And it triggers peristalsis. Now, if we remember peristalsis from our biology days, if you imagine a stocking which has fibers that run both upwards and around.
Yes, a stock. Good.
Those will contract at different times and push the bowel through the movement of the bowel. But yes, so this is a thing now.
Creating a bolus of material.
I totally watched Harry Enfield when he was the crass South African pharmacist.
Yeah.
When he got handed a prescription for tempezoline.
Yeah, he goes, "Oh, hello, Mrs. Johnson. How are you?" And she goes, "I'm very well, thank you, doctor." And he goes, "Oh, very good, very good. And your stools?" And she goes, "I'm sorry?" He goes, "Your stools, are you pushing out firmer turds?" just like a South African would, you know? And then she goes, and she's getting so embarrassed because there are people behind her in the queue, and this pharmacist is like shouting all her personal information out in the shop. And she goes, your stools, you obviously had really liquid stools for a long time. Doctor prescribed tempezoline. Only it's very rare that he would prescribe tempezoline. You must have really splattered the bowl. And then she just wants to die. But like, do we now need machines in a pill that we swallow that go into our gut and then move around? I mean, it's so revolting. I suppose
apparently 16% of people in the United States suffer with chronic constipation, and they've tried everything from eating fiber to.
Have you seen what they eat?
No, they've tried everything. These people, you're only allowed to have this pill if you've been, well, certainly in the test phase. You know, if you've been closely monitored. But the good thing that they're trying to say with this thing is that it's totally non-chemical. It's all mechanical.
Yeah,
but,
sure. little like machine, like a submarine. Who knows that there aren't little tiny people in there who are busy traveling through your body. What was that movie called where they did the traveling through the body in a tiny little submarine? Do you remember the movie?
Jeez, no.
There was a
I
movie
can-
about that. Anyway, it just frightens the hell out of me. So what's it called?
Vibrant.
Lovely. Lovely. Take a great word like vibrant and turn it into something revolt.
So yeah, apparently it works really well. It vibrates for 3 seconds on, 3 seconds off. A lot of the test participants couldn't actually feel it, but the others, there are some that could. I just don't know how comfortable I would be.
You'd be very uncomfortable.
You know, it makes me think of
And
abdominal
this is
pain and distension.
this is not a great idea for a Valentine's gift, so I take that back. All right, we're not going to give this.
Depends on what you're into.
Not very nice. The shutdown has rocked UCT on the first day of study as students have fumed over fee blocks and housing. So, our universities are such a disaster at the moment. They really are. And I would encourage any parent of any student who is going to enroll in university this year to seriously think about maybe not doing it. I think that the universities have deteriorated to a point now where I don't even know if it's valuable for people to be going there for an education. The new academic year has just kicked off at UCT with an SRC announcement. Now, bear in mind, the Students' Representative Council, it's day one. These are either the SRC from last year, who really should have passed and got out of university already, or they have no business telling everybody what to do on day one. They're shutting down all campus activities in protest against fee blocks and access to student housing. Now, it is not the university's job to house people. It is a place of learning. If I were in charge of university, I would abolish all housing on university campuses.
Really?
University, yes, it is a privilege. And you should be, you know what you should do? You should have to use whatever. There are people all over South Africa using all kinds of expensive, outrageous public transport to get to and from work every day. And if you're a student and you could afford to be a student, and it shouldn't just be for rich people, but there should be adequate accommodation around there, but not paid for by the university. You should still have to pay for that yourself. Take a fucking night job. Why are we, as the taxpayer, being forced to subsidize people living for vastly reduced cost near a university so they can study all day and drink all night? I don't buy it.
And then fail.
And then fail and end up on the SRC. I mean, do me a favor. A friend of mine just started lecturing at this new university that I think it's AfriForum or Solidariteit or whatever established. And he's just started lecturing there. He said, you cannot believe the number of lecturers who've come from other universities and who are up to here. They get to this place and they're like, right, let's teach people again, because that's not what's going on at university.
Mm.
It's time to end this stupidity. So I don't know. You want to go to university, just get ready for all of this to be taking place under your nose. And they're not churning out quality people either. So if they were at least doing that, maybe we would have something to say about it, This very, very tragic story last week, Friday, about the AKA shooting has brought the eThekwini mayor out into the open to beef up security after that incident. Of course, his name is Xolisi Kaunda. He said he's going to tighten up security in the city. They were shot outside a famous Durban restaurant on the weekend. There have been safety fears in parts of the city, especially on Florida Road, and the mayor has vowed that the metro would be deploying more security officers. Meanwhile, some artists said that they're worried, especially with a motive being unknown.
That's it. That's the scary part.
Yeah, because I think it's fairly clear to everybody that this was a hit, right?
Mm.
There's no two ways about it. And this is now, we've gone through the grief and shock phase of this to some degree. Some people are still in it legitimately. But now we're in the phase where people are going to start asking questions. Like, how did this happen? Why did it happen? what exactly, how do we break it down? Have we made any arrests? What's the investigation turning up? People are interested in this stuff. So I think we'll have to see what comes of this. But I think a lot of people are very, very uncomfortable about the idea that this could happen to probably one of our most famous musical artists of all time. This is, I said it yesterday to Lebang, the equivalent would be what I as a rap fan in the 90s, when I heard about Notorious B.I.G. or Tupac being killed. It's kind of at that level for South Africa. Market's much smaller, but it's at that level. It's very, very scary. Anyway, I mean, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are on all of that. We've got to get into that a little bit later on. But I'm even more thrilled this morning to welcome Gus Silber. Now, Gus is absolutely incredible. He's prolific. He has been a journalist, a writer, an author, scriptwriter, speechwriter, media trainer, mentor for more than 30 years in a variety of journalistic and writing fields. And I know you'll be interested to speak to Gus too. Holds a Master of Arts degree in Journalism and Media Studies from Rhodes, which he achieved with distinction. His thesis topic was the consumption and sharing of news by baby boomers and millennials living in family households in Johannesburg, which is fascinating too. So we might get into some of that with him as well. He's written a number of best-selling books, and I've got some of them on the shelves here in my house. Socio-political satire. He's done digital technology. He's talked about almost anything under the sun. And his most recent book is called Electric Graffiti, which is an anthology of assorted long-form social media posts on Facebook. Very, very clever, because that's really where a lot of people are doing their creative writing and doing some amazing stuff. I mean, we often poo-poo social media for being silly, but there is a lot of really clever stuff going on there too. So let's talk to Gus, because I'm really excited to have him on the show. I think it's the first time we've had you on, Gus. How are you?
That's right. Thanks very much, Gareth. Thank you. I'm good. Hope you are too.
Good. Extremely well. I can't believe with all these years of kind of you being in the media business and us having a show that this is the first time I've had you on, but rather let it be now than never. And I'm thrilled to be able to talk to you.
Thank you.
So listen, Leigh-Ann's probably got a bunch of questions for you too, because she's a writer as well. And I think everybody imagines that they can write. Do you think that writing is one of those things that some people are born with a really, really incredible ability to do? Or do you think it's something that can be learnt and can be improved upon, even if you're born with some talent for language and for the written word? I mean, what's your feeling on that with all your experience?
Yeah, I definitely feel that everyone's got the capability to communicate through words. And it's something that we obviously learn, right from grade one, really, when we first start working with the alphabet and figuring out how to communicate. Some people go beyond that. Some people enjoy writing as a form of art. Others enjoy it as a craft. But I think the age we're living in now, when there's so many tools that are making it easier for us to be able to coherently string words together, I think that's actually great. Some people obviously are able to write fiction, others are able to write nonfiction. It definitely is a talent as well. But I think in the same way that everyone's born with the ability to hold a pencil in their hand and draw something, the same really applies to writing. It's just a question of, discipline and applying certain rules. But yeah, I think everybody should be able to write to some level.
But it's certainly, sorry, Gareth, Gus, it's certainly probably easier for people who are born with this talent or are genetically predisposed to have a love and an understanding of languages. Certainly easier for them to churn out content and copy.
That's right. Look, I think the first rule, and it's a bit of a cliche, I mean, if you want to write, if you want to be a good writer, you need, first of all, to be a good and very kind of dedicated reader. So the more you read, the more you'll figure out what writing is. Some people write for fun, some people write for leisure, some people write for business, but the ability to, for me, writing is the ability to kind of make sense of the chaos of the world. It's a very chaotic world we live in. And what you do when you're writing, you're kind of filtering that chaos and you're turning it into some form of clarity. That's very important. So that skill, that ability is actually more important than the actual writing. It's the ability to kind of make sense of this crazy world we live in. If you can do that, you're beginning to be a writer.
I suppose that's probably the best summation of all of it that I've heard, is really it's taking in all of this information and being able to output something that everybody else will go, oh yeah, that's what I mean when I say X, Y, and Z. And it's like it's a clear, distilled version of what's going on. And occasionally, I mean, like with your stuff, you're a really funny writer. I mean, I've read stuff from you for years now, and you obviously have an ability to see, interpret, and then convert all of that seeing and interpreting into hilarious writing and observation, which is sometimes very poignant. And we do live in a country where there's plenty of source material, right?
That's right. And absolutely, there's never any shortage of that. And I think more maybe than in any other society, writers have a kind of duty here. And also I think, it's not just a duty, it's also a very kind of rewarding thing to do. They have a duty to be able to figure out how to cut through the chaos and not necessarily make sense of it, because that's very difficult, but just kind of give some interpretation of it so that people can, exactly as you say, have a kind of moment of, oh, okay, so that's what it's all about. And then I think it's very important to read as many contrasting views as you possibly can. That's why social media is so important. If we just had one platform where you just had one point of view, it would be a very dull society. We have so many conflicting, and also I think what's changed writing in a huge way, and more people write now than ever before in the history of humanity. So even if you write, 2 paragraphs, 2 sentences on social media, you're contributing in some way to the written text of our society, and that's actually very exciting. That hasn't happened before in history. Writing's always kind of tended to be for the elite, for a sort of small elite of scribes and intellectuals. Now anybody can contribute to this debate, and you don't need to be, in inverted commas, a writer to be part of this debate. You just need to be able to put words together in a way that is provocative, moving, in some way cuts through the clutter.
But I do think that, and this is where we're going to lean on your expertise and your years of experience in this respect, there is a difference between writing for, let's say, Facebook and then Twitter, and then writing, an academic paper or writing or writing really beautiful fiction or really well researched nonfiction. How do you get your head into, for example, Facebook, and then how do you get your head into Twitter? And for you, how does that stuff make sense? Because I think a lot of people could do with some advice in how to do this better.
Yeah. So Gareth, you mentioned the key word earlier on. You said observation. So, I mean, the first thing writers do, writers essentially use their senses to write. And the first sense that we all kind of, the first sense we kind of grow, we're born into a world where we can't make any sense of anything. And then we kind of start seeing the world if we are privileged enough to have the gift of sight, But you see the world, you look at the world around you, and you try to kind of describe what you're seeing. I think that's essential. Not simply describing what you're seeing, but trying to figure out what it all means. And then you kind of use your other senses. The more writers use their senses, the more vivid their writing will be. So that would be my first kind of, call it a tip or technique or whatever. If you can, through your writing, convey the senses of the world around you, whatever it is. That's why writing doesn't need to be about great things and great kind of events and so on. It can be as simple as waking up in the morning and getting a sense of what's happening outside, and then describing how you interact with people. That's why social media is so important, because most of it is concerned with the so-called mundane events of our day. Writing doesn't have to be about the grand things. And that's why if you can just kind of in some way use words to communicate what your particular world is about and what's happening in your particular world, you'll strike universal chords with people. So people sometimes think that writing is a kind of, almost like a sacred thing, but it's actually simply a way of recording what's happening around us. It's just putting words down on paper or on a screen, on a phone, doesn't matter what medium you use, but it all begins with reacting and observing to the world around you and then trying to convey that to other people. That's key.
So, Gus, you're very excited about ChatGPT, and you're probably the only writer who's excited about this because a lot of people who are in the writing business are very nervous about what ChatGPT might do. Leigh-Ann and I were talking earlier, it's Valentine's Day, and we were talking about these things that they used to do in the 1800s called Vinegar Valentines, where people would send rude and insulting poems to each other. It wasn't all just love. You know, you'd send the person who was rude to you at the shop an anonymous note on Valentine's Day, which was hardly like the kind of thing that you would say to someone in person. And I think in some ways that the internet has taken over that role. But I tried to do something with ChatGPT earlier this morning.
Yeah.
I said, write a rude Valentine's poem for somebody. And it came up with this, which is why there'll always be room for real writers. It said, I'm sorry, but as an AI language model, I cannot generate a rude Valentine's poem for anyone.
Oh, no,
It goes against it goes against my programming to produce offensive, hurtful content. Instead, may I suggest focusing on positive and uplifting messages, even for those we may not find attractive. Beauty is subjective. What's inside that truly counts. Fuck off, ChatGPT. You know, Gus, this is proof positive. This is proof positive that I don't need some machine moralizing to me. When I've asked it to do something, its whole purpose as a machine is to do what it is told. And it comes up with this PC claptrap. This proves that I'll still have to pay Gus Silber or Leigh-Ann Moll a lot of money to come up with a rude Valentine's poem, right?
Well, Leigh-Ann, that's very good to know that there's still room for writers. Look,
no, it's so true.
I think what's exciting about ChatGPT is that it's like, you know, if you trace the timeline of writing and you go all the way back to Mesopotamia and the stone tablets, and you go to Gutenberg's press and all the way up to the internet, it's just part of a long evolution of tools that have helped us write. So looked at in that light, it's no different really from other tools. What's interesting about it is this algorithmic programming. And I think this phrase is going to become embedded in our society, especially this year. You know, I am a large language tool. You know, it's something that people, I think, will start working into their conversation. It's a great way to get out of a conversation, actually. You know, I'm a large language tool and my programming doesn't allow me to participate. But where it's very useful, I think, more so, I think the poems and the songs and so on are great novelties, and they're great ways of demonstrating what ChatGPT can do. But where it's really useful is, once again, it comes down to what I was saying earlier, cutting through the clutter and making sense of things. So you can take a long document. I think the limit is 2,500 words. You can take that document, whatever it is, put it into ChatGPT and just say, please summarize. And it'll give you a 4-point executive summary that I think is hugely valuable. And for business or for personal reasons, for journalists or for, you know, anybody who needs to make sense, it doesn't take the place of careful perusal. But this idea of an instant summarizer, and also, you know, it's very good at drudge work. For instance, you know, in the business context, write me a proposal for funding for an NGO, let's say, which is a good use of ChatGPT. It'll churn something out based on very basic information. And then you take that, and I think the key is to use ChatGPT and other AI tools as first drafters. So you don't take what you're getting and send it out to the world. You say, okay, cool, let me have a look at this. So it's almost as if you've outsourced it and told somebody, summarize this, write a proposal. Then, of course, you know, you take it yourself and you look at it. We're at the novelty stage of this technology. So a lot of what people are talking about is the kind of fun side of it. And a lot of people also are discovering the limitations. It's got huge limitations. It does something that AI people called hallucinating, which is quite funny. It simply comes up, it refuses to admit that it doesn't know. So it'll come up with completely. And so the key is that the test of this is ask ChatGPT to explain something that you're an expert on and then see what it says. And you might be shocked. You'll say, wow, this is like completely wrong. So you need to be very wary, but I think that wariness and that skepticism is like rule number one of using the internet anyway.
Especially with fake news.
Yeah, you do a Google search, you know, invariably it takes you to Wikipedia. You can sort of trust Wikipedia to an extent, but still you have to be wary.
if
Yeah.
ChatGPT gives you a perfect summary of everything that you're an expert in, then you probably should find another subject to be expert in, because you're not going to have a job for very long.
Yeah.
It is interesting that, you know, those creative pursuits, despite all the protestations of, you know, Silicon Valley and people who are well versed in this sort of technological experimentation, because that's really what it is at this point.
Yeah.
To replace the creative instinct and to be able to, you know, really come up with bizarre, wacky, left field, humorous ideas. I mean, it's going to be a long time before machines can be truly funny.
Yeah.
And I think that that's always going to create a space for people. If, of course, you're a dreary person who does draft proposals for getting NGO funding, then you know, if that's what your life consists of,
Yeah.
God be with you, and may ChatGPT help you get there, because that's an awful way to live. To look
Yeah.
for, you know, funding for an NGO and have to type up proposals all day. What an awful existence. What is it about writing that still gets you excited? I mean, when you sit down and you've got a new project to put together, like, for example, this new electric graffiti book of yours.
Yeah.
What gets you really excited? Is it the idea that, okay, now I'm going to have fun, now I'm going to write some really smart, interesting, clever stuff, or
Yeah.
now I'm going to write something that people are really going to want to read, or now, in the case of this book, I'm going to go through some of the Facebook posts that have made me smile, laugh, think, whatever, and I'm going to put them all together in a way that people can, you know, read it out of context, out of the context of Facebook, and still have all of those exciting feelings that I've just described now.
Yeah. So, look, I think, first of all, you know, if writing in some way or other is your job, you don't really, certainly I don't, you don't really sit down and say, yeah, I'm going to write today. It's more a case, you know, there's a famous saying, I'm sure you've heard, you know, I don't like writing, but I love having written. It's the feeling of having done something that makes you feel good. But what kind of keeps me going, and the reason I kind of enjoy social media so much is because there's no mediation. It's just you and your audience out there, whoever they are and however big they might be. But you know, writing is such an ancient thing. I mean, it's actually such a basic thing, and it's just words that you put together. And I think you mentioned earlier, you said, you know, smile, laugh, think. I think for me, the rewarding thing is using writing in some way or other to move people. And I think that's the challenge, and that's the key reward. If you can write something simply by using the 26 letters of the alphabet, putting them together in sentences and paragraphs, and if you can move people in any way, if you can move them to laughter, to tears, if you can make them think, if you can also kind of make them act. So writing as a tool for a call to action is very, very important. But, you know, when you read a piece of writing and in some way it moves you and it stays in your head, even just, I think this is kind of very important, you don't have to write something that people will remember every word of. That's never going to happen. But if you can write something that one sentence, one image will stand out and people will remember it, then in some way you've moved them. That's the biggest reward of writing. And I think that's why I enjoy writing, or I enjoy having written. It's the idea that in some way you're reaching out and touching universal chords and universal emotions. That's the key. You know, business writing and proposals don't do that. But in the they still have to move people. But writing as a form of reaching out and touching someone's life in some small way, even just one person, that's actually the most rewarding thing that comes from this practice.
Well, I'm curious about how, like, so many people are coping with the intrusion of technology into the world of writing. But I think that it's always going to be exciting also to see the kind of stuff that we've always respected about writers is like the ideas, that distillation we were talking about earlier. You've also written for movies, and now when you write for movies, how does that change the game? How do you write for movies as opposed to writing a book?
Yeah. So the big difference, the huge difference, writing is actually a very solitary act. No matter how many people are involved in the process, that's still just you and the machine that you're using. Movies or any sort of visual medium, whatever it might be, but especially movies, are hugely collaborative. And to some extent, people have to kind of work in a team in one way or another. And that actually can be very difficult, because if you write, you're used to writing on your own. and you're used to at some point having input from other people, feedback, criticism, call it what you want to. But the movie process is incredibly dynamic right from the start, and it's hugely, full of criticism. So there's very little room for kind of fragile egos and kind of frailty when it comes to putting a movie together. That's what's nice about it. I mean, every movie that comes onto the circuit or comes onto streaming or whatever, it's a kind of small miracle, the fact that it actually happens. When you look at the credits of a movie and you see all of those people somehow work together to produce this thing. So writing it is just the start of it, but it's so collaborative. It's literally sitting around a table. It's arguing with people. That's what makes it very different from other kinds of solo writing. But the idea that what you're doing, words, once again, on paper or on a screen, will be visualized and turned. Look, I mean, the kind of movies I've worked on have very much been genre movies, horror and comedy and so on. But still, the idea, once again, there you're moving people. You're hopefully scaring them and making them laugh.
Yeah.
That collaborative thing that makes it different.
It almost, doesn't it give you a little more confidence when your work is being checked almost by more people before it goes out? When you're doing that sort of solo writing, it might be one person who checks your copy. And the disadvantage with that is that one person may not be moved by what you've written, but you know for a fact that there are going to be others who will be, and they may reject your copy for that reason. But with this collaborative effort, it's been tried and tested. So it almost gives you, more confidence.
Yeah. Look, writing that is only for yourself, is not really writing. Writing has to be exposed to it has to have oxygen to kind of be writing. So in other words, people who write poetry and keep it to themselves, people who write journals and keep it to themselves, they are writing, but until they find an audience, they won't actually know if it's writing. So writing has to in some way move people. It's very important to have input and feedback and criticism. It's hugely important. But because writing is such a difficult thing to do, and because it's such a personal thing to do, it can be very difficult to take criticism. That's why editors are so important. And that's why I think, going back to ChatGPT, one of its, not just ChatGPT, but other AI tools, it's very good at actually giving you an early kind of edit. So you can say to ChatGPT, you can input text, and you can say, analyze this for tone and style and suggest improvement. Now, this is a completely kind of non-judgmental machine. So it's not like you're showing it to an actual human who will give you feedback based on their humanity. So that allows you to get a very early sense of what you're doing right and what you're doing wrong. And of course, you can completely ignore it. But still, the idea that you have a robotic kind of editor who's non-judgmental, and yet is kind of skilled, because they're as skilled as what their input is. But I found ChatGPT in particular very good at that, at analyzing sentiment and tone and just kind of guiding you. I don't use it much for that, but when I have used it like experimentally, and especially with other people's writing, of course, I find it very, very good at cutting down to the basics of what's wrong with the piece.
Yeah, I used ChatGPT just yesterday for a writing task that I had. So to give you an idea, I found an article online that had the exact elements that I needed for mine. And the amount of time that I would have sat there, and it's also on a subject that I don't really know much about. So it would have been hugely useful to just use that article, but obviously we're not going to do that as writers.
Yeah.
But what I did was, for the first time, I used ChatGPT in this way by inputting that article and asking it to reword it.
Yes.
And it was hugely helpful in that it pulled out, it extracted the important bits, summarized them, took away and completely eliminated the emotional writing that was in that blog and anything personalized, and gave me a really good basis to work from and to add my own touches to. And I've lambasted myself for feeling a little lazy and asked myself if I was being lazy. But in turn, it allowed me to create a much better product than I would have without it. Yes. And it also freed up time for me to spend more time on the creative elements.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think if you hit the nail on the head, Leigh-Ann, it's if you can use these tools, whatever you do, to save you some drudgery and to assist you in, especially in the creative process, then I don't think there's, every technology comes with fear, uncertainty, and doubt, the famous kind of FUD acronym. But if you can use these tools to help you, then you have nothing to fear. That's what I did a bit of a workshop the other day, and a lot of writers are very worried about these tools. But if you use them to improve your writing, and also if you use them as your kind of side-by-side assistant, they will actually help you with the creative process, and they'll ultimately help you be a better writer. There's no doubt about it. They're just tools. It's the same as the internet. When the internet kind of in 1994, a lot of people were terrified of it, and a lot of people particularly said it's going to make people lazy.
It's like a typewriter or a computer or a printer or a printing press.
Yeah, famously, Plato, back in the ancient Greek days, he wrote a whole document about the dangers of writing. He said writing was going to make people lose their memories. So in other words, writing things down was going to have a terrible effect, particularly on youth. So we're getting exactly the same thing today. AI is going to make people lazy, and they're going to forget the basics. But it just comes down to who you are and what your own kind of goals and aspirations are. If you're a serious writer, if you're a serious artist as well, the same discussion is being held in art and music. If you respect and value your craft, you'll use these tools to their best benefit and to your best benefit. And then you have nothing to be afraid of. Then it's like, wow, a new tool to play with and to work with.
Yeah. Do you think, because you do media training for people and you also help people to write better and all that, and God bless you for that, by the way, because the less shitty writing I encounter on a daily basis, the happier I am. And there's a lot of kind of very basic stuff that's being left by the wayside. I'm afraid I'm not particularly hopeful, thanks to emoticons and the inability of most people to form complete sentences when they speak. I'm a little less enthusiastic about the future of writing. If you consider just movies, I complained about this on the show the other day, so I hate to drone on about it, but that's also partly what happens as you get older, as you start thinking that certain things are deteriorating and other things are not. I watched a brilliant movie with Katharine Hepburn and Peter O'Toole in it called The Lion in the Winter.
Oh, yes.
And the dialogue between these two people was almost Shakespearean. It was so good. And Shakespeare is great, but Shakespeare is also terrifying to some people. Yeah. So I'm not going to use him as the example. I watched that movie. It was made in maybe the 60s or the 70s, at the latest the 70s. And Gus, the language was magnificent. Every line was just absolutely spectacular. It was as if someone had gone through it with a fine-tooth comb and made sure that they left nothing that was ordinary or space or time-consuming or just a filler. Everything in there meant something. It had a punch to it. It was delivered beautifully by these brilliant actors. But essentially, the script must have shone like gold when it was first printed. And I look at the script for a Marvel movie these days, and the tawdry, lazy, uninspiring, and embarrassing dialogue that these characters use to address each other. And I think actually writing's in a pretty bad way. And while there are people who are still writing good stuff in 2023, I feel like they're few and far between, because I do think that the lowest hanging fruit has become the goal for so many people. If you want to sell books, or if you want to sell movies, or if you want to make a splash on social media, you need to actually dumb it down to the point where the people who don't really have an appreciation for anything longer than a 2-syllable word are the main audience. Do you feel like that sometimes, or am I out of touch? Am I being superior
I also to this day I also remember The Lion in Winter, just brilliant, but also of course two brilliant actors going against each other. But I think throughout history there's always been so-called high art and so-called low art. So you've always had different kinds of writing, particularly in the Hollywood context. And if you look at, I think one of the amazing things about the world we live in today is the huge, almost overwhelming variety of choice. So you can go onto Netflix or Showmax or any other streaming platform, and you can choose for yourself an extremely well-written, well-directed movie that you might have to watch over several nights, or you can choose something that's completely kind of pulp and cliched and formulaic, and yet you can still enjoy it. But there are still a lot of movies being made with incredibly good mean, I saw a movie the other day called Tar, which was about a woman orchestra conductor and her kind of breakdown and her cancellation and so on, with Cate Blanchett, an amazing performance by her. And you look at a movie like that, which is slow moving, there's very little action. The writing is brilliant, the acting is brilliant. And, you know, you could watch that one night, and then the next night, I mean, I don't really watch Marvel movies, but if you wanted to, you could watch a slam bang, a superhero action movie, just for almost like relief, for an antidote. But there still is a heck of a lot of good writing in movies. There still is a lot of good writing in books. Funny enough, one thing that the internet has done, it's kind of dumbed down a lot of things. I think TikTok is an example of like the sort of dumber side of the internet, the short attention span side of it. But then you also have a revival, a completely revival of long form writing. So in the old days, long form writing was limited by how many ads a magazine got, let's say.
Right.
But now there's no limit to that. So you can have 10,000 word, 15,000 word pieces that are amazing to read, but that don't feel ponderous because you're kind of scrolling. So you read them in a different way. But there's so much good writing. Yeah, that's been, I think, you could call it a counterintuitive consequence of the world we live in, is that it's opened up space for people to write long, well thought out pieces, as well as 240 character tweets. So I think you have to be a bit of a sort of polymath these days. You know, you have to be interested in all sorts of things. You have to be interested in all media, and you have to be quite discerning in what you pluck out from the massive, overwhelming information. Otherwise, you'll go a little bit crazy. But yeah, and there certainly is a lot of stuff that makes you shake your head at the state of the world, and you do kind of. I mean, I'm a huge fan of Reddit. I use Reddit a lot. It's kind of my most, not but my favorite news platform. And you see on Reddit some very, very funny meme style content, and then you see an absolute expert talking about their expert subject with passion and insight. There's no other platform that combines that kind of dumb stuff with the high intellectual expert stuff and does it so well. So for me, it's like a balance. It's like you find somewhere in between those two forms, you find the perfect way of accessing information nowadays. And I think if Lion in Winter was remade today, it would be just as good. We'd have different actors, obviously, but it would be just as good and just as powerful in its writing. And, you know, people like Quentin Tarantino who write very different dialogue, but it's still enjoyable watching a Tarantino movie, not just for the action, but just for the way the characters fire off those lines at each other. That's good writing. Yeah. And in its own way, it's kind of modern Shakespearean. It really is.
No, that's a good point. I mean, you don't want to sit here and complain about that stuff, but it does seem to me that, you know, we used to do like creative writing. We used to learn about things like irony and sarcasm. Yes. I see a lot less of that. And maybe it's also as a result of the fact that so much of our communication isn't delivered with tone. You know, the problem with social media is so often, and it can be partly filled. I mean, I'm very hard on people who use emoticons the whole time, because I think that's just lazy. I use them too, but only in WhatsApp or in social media communications. But very often it almost matters that you use the right emoticon just so that people know that you're joking, because so many people lost the ability to interpret things like irony and even metaphor. It becomes so hard and so kind of there are no nuances in the language when you're writing. Yeah, and sterile when you write on things like Twitter, for example. And do you find that people are becoming worse at interpreting those signals?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No, I mean, I've fallen victim to it myself quite often. You know, it's like you kind of write something that goes completely over a lot of people's heads, and then it turns into an argument because they've misunderstood your tone. Tone is incredibly important. I mean, even something as simple as a WhatsApp message. If you dare kind of end a sentence with a full stop rather than using an exclamation mark, you know, you can read someone say, you know, what do you mean? So that's why, I mean, I never use emojis, but my main reason for not using them is that they're a bit of a schlep, you know. You've got to kind of change your keyboard, kind of, you've got to reach for the emoji. But I do agree with you to a large extent. It's laziness. If you can say something in words, rather do that. But irony, sarcasm, and so on, it's quite possible to to use those stylistic things, instinctively on social media, and people who are able to do that, conversely, they can make somebody's day. A good piece of sarcastic commentary on Twitter can be really powerful. But look, I think it does come back to education. I don't think it's being taught as much as it was, in the early days of education, when irony, you have a whole lesson on it and try and figure out who the good ironic writers were. A lot of it just comes down to your own ability to communicate. Some people are fantastic communicators verbally, but they struggle to put things in words. So you'll have a conversation with somebody and they have all of those things. They're sarcastic, they're ironic, they are relevant, they make you laugh and they make you think, but they struggle to put those things in words. So the fact that we live in a world where you're encouraged to put your thoughts into words in whatever medium is, I think, ultimately a good thing. But you have to take each medium for what it is. WhatsApp is not going to be a source of great literary enjoyment. It's a communication platform. Twitter started as a platform for what's happening in your life. Now it's become a kind of commentary platform, and it's become incredibly political as well. A lot of the Twitter conversation is based on the politics of the day. But still, I think it's kind of a gift to have all these tools at our disposal, all these platforms.
And the point of having language is to have clarity and certainty around what words mean and to understand each other, right? And I do feel like a lot of that politically correct language and a lot of the politicized language that we use these days is actually getting us further and further away from understanding each other, as opposed to getting us closer to understanding each other. The fact that there are people in America who are arguing about, and even Merriam-Webster and other dictionaries changing their definition of terms like woman because of the transgender community, is leading to a position where people are actually less clear about what words mean than they've ever been. And it almost seems a purposeful act on the part of so many of these people who are political actors.
That's right. Well, it brings us back to the very idea of what words are. They're actually incredibly powerful. They always have been powerful. We're going through a period in history, and I think there are cycles. I think we'll have a cycle again where people use words a lot more freely. At the moment, I think you have to do a heck of a lot of tap dancing around words. I mean, there's an excellent website that I follow. I don't know if you know it, called Spiked. It's a UK website. Yeah, so Spike kind of has these kind of debates, and Spike is very outspoken about the way that language is changing and the way that the meaning of words is changing. Woman, for example, being one. But that debate I found quite fascinating, because words aren't just things that you say out loud and that you put on paper. They have real, incredible power. So we're simply going through a phase where words are beginning to shift their meaning for social and political reasons. That process itself is fascinating, but absolutely quite right. It's shifting the conversation, and it's making people very cautious. It's putting a whole new set of rules and conventions on the way we communicate with each other. But I think this has happened before in history, and it will happen again. It's just an example, I think, of how powerful words are. It just reminds us of that, and it reminds us of the way words shift their meaning over time too.
Well, Gus, I love talking to you, and I think we could carry on talking to you all morning, because you're the sort of person who has really useful insights and so much of this that we are stuck with these days. Language is being used properly. It's not being used properly. Where it's being used masterfully, I think we can keep an eye on you. You're also training people, and thank goodness for that. You're running a series of workshops on ChatGPT, which I think is fascinating. And congrats with your new book. I mean, I hope it goes really, really well. I'm glad that we got you on this morning to share your thoughts with us.
Thank you very much, Gareth, and thanks, Leigh-Ann. Great chatting with you.
Awesome to see you. Thank you. There's the brilliant Gus Silber, who has been in South African media for many years now as a journalist, author, scriptwriter, speechwriter, and media trainer, and someone who we love to check in with from time to time. So, Leigh-Ann, I just want to quickly ask you before we wrap up for this morning, do you think this is for real? I got this from Netflix, N-I-T. Sorry, Netflix. If you look at the top left, it says Netflix payment failed. It says, it's got the Netflix N, but it's not even in the right font. I mean, it's like it's stretched out. And
it's
then it
too
says
fat, yes.
Update your payment details. Your account will be locked because your payment was declined. Oh, I think I'm going to forget. Yeah, I think I'll forget to do that from Netflix this week. Jesus.
Yeah, don't go there.
No, I think that's one bit of writing I won't be doing today. And then this one, which I think is brilliant, just to wrap up the Valentine's discussion from earlier. Congo Chris sent us this. A Valentine's Day meat tray for 2.
No, it's for 1, which is even worse.
Sorry.
Yeah,
it's
not. It's definitely not meat and 2 veg. It's meat and 2 meats.
That's
but for
great.
those who can't see it, it's an extremely phallic arrangement of boerewors and 2 meatballs.
Yes, very, very
on
nice.
A polystyrene tray. Lovely.
And while we're on Valentine's Day, the 2023 Cliff Central Valentine's Day Spotify playlist is now available with songs chosen by everybody in the office. If you want to go and check that out, look out for it on the social media, and we will also put it. Yeah,
he's dancing with me, cheek to cheek.
I don't think that's going to be among them, but you can go and find out.
Damn.
All right. We'll put it up on all of our social media this morning. All right, everybody, have a happy day. We'll see you tomorrow at 6:00. Cheers. Bye-bye.